Well, Joe, welcome. This is Coach Ina, your co-host, or our co-host. We
Yes. Hey,
we
Joel.
Hi there.
we had the pleasure of interviewing another person from Fishers. It was a young lady though, Maya.
Maya? Oh yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, and I was like, well, we got Fishers people today in the house.
Yeah.
Yes.
Well, Joe, tell us a little bit about you, Mr. Joel Gates. I can give the big stuff. State runner-up in the discus and UT commit, but go ahead and run it down for us.
So I'm a shot put and discus thrower. Um I like a lot of other throwers, I kind of stumbled upon the sport. I was a football player my whole life, and then one of my football coaches was also the throwing coach, and so he said, "Hey, you should come try this." And I was pretty good at it my freshman year, so I stuck with it, and then it paid off. So
Okay, because that was gonna be like one of my questions is how you got into throwing. But yeah, I see. So if you had a coach who's like, I just want to keep working with you, and then you
yeah.
end
Mhm.
up going at that route. But how did it? What about throwing kept your interest since you're a football guy?
It was something to do in the spring, so it kept me active. And then I picked it up pretty quick, and then throwing is also one of those things where it's pretty technical, and you can change minute little things in your technique and your form. And so I just found that very interesting that just one thing could change, and my throw would go farther.
Continue. You said you did it in the spring. Did you continue playing football throughout your high school
I
career?
did,
Okay.
yes.
Okay. Who's been your biggest inspiration in, you kind of stumbled upon it, like you said, your football coach was also the throws coach, so he got a 2 for 1. Um, did you start kind of studying anybody or looking at other throwers that gave you inspiration and motivation, like, okay, I'm picking up on this and I really could be great at it. And here we are. Now you have a scholarship to UT. So, yeah, walk us through that a little bit.
Yeah, so my two older brothers were also throwers, and so
Okay.
I definitely kind of the competition of wanting to beat them. So looking up to them, but also wanted to best their marks was part of it. And then I think it was last Olympic trials, I believe, is when Ryan Krauser broke the world record, and so that was right as I was starting to pick up throwing. I was like, okay, I really like this, and then I remember seeing that, and I took a screen recording on my phone, and I still have it saved. And I just like to look at his form and
That's
stack it up against.
awesome. That's
Okay.
awesome.
So what did you? I know you were saying you changed like you can change minute things, and you'll see an exceptional result when it comes to throwing. What were some of the things that you changed over the years to kind of get you to the point where you were throwing what you were throwing now?
Yeah. So once I got the basic form down, just kind of like the motion of the rotation. Um, my biggest problem was with the finish of my throw. The finish of my throw, I was leaning back, and so I wasn't getting the hip explosion, and my height on my throw wasn't good. And so I started to pick that up this year, changed the finish of my throw and my release, and that's when I saw a lot of distance put on.
When you reckon that we both having some great thoughts behind like kind of how this has grown into something amazing. So when you were, looking at these are some things that I can change or do better so I can throw farther, would you say that that took you more time? You got it all together in your regular practice? Did you have to go the extra mile? What did that look like for you to really work on honing in on tweaking little components of your throw?
Yeah, so I found most of the time when I would figure something out is when I would go and have sessions just me, and that's kind of doing that, putting those extra hours is when I found that awareness. I mean, you go through the motion enough times, you realize, okay, on that one, I could feel that this wasn't right, or this was a little different, this wasn't quite right, and so then you try something else, and then if that's better, then you adjust to make those changes.
So with with all your training and continuously doing all these small things, how do you like mentally prepare to get ready for like big competitions or any meet for that matter? Like because there's a lot of small things that you have to do on a consistent basis, like mentally, what's that prep look like for you?
So mentally, I actually have a story with this one. My coach told me it was before indoor state of my junior year, and he told me, he said it was 2 days before, and he said we're going to take these 2 days off. And he told me about this Harvard study. I think it was Harvard, I believe. And he said it was a free throw study. So they had three groups of people, and they had one group was that had everybody test, shoot free throws, and had their percentage. And they said, all right, we're going to come back in 2 weeks. And one group would practice, had a certain amount of shots that they had to practice every single day for those 2 weeks, and then come back. And then they had one group do absolutely nothing and then come back. And then they had that last group have no practice but visualize practicing and visualize shooting free throws and visualizing the ball going in. And when they came back and retested, the group that visualized was 1% off of the group that actually practiced. And so I've kind of put that into my mental prep before a big meet, is just imagining the best possible outcome that I could have and going through the form in my head and my technique, and just picturing what the best possible throw could be. And so once you get that picture in your mind, it comes to fruition when you actually throw. So
When you're, it's 2 days before and your coach is telling you to rest and look at this study, what made you say, okay, I'm going to try this? Were you at all panicked? Were you like, okay, I think he's lost it, he doesn't know what he's talking about? Or were you like, hey, if he's telling me to do this, I'm going to do it? How'd you navigate that change to where you thought you probably were about to practice leading up until even the day of the meet, and him saying, no, we're going to rest and you're going to do some visualization and really get your mind right for this competition?
yeah, ultimately I was definitely confused. I was like, okay, I don't know if he knows what he's talking about, but I think I threw a 2-foot PR that meet,
Wow.
and shot, which was pretty
Wow.
big. And so it definitely does work in what I've done. And so when it worked that time, I was like, okay, my coach, he knows a little something what he's talking about in this mental game. And so I started to do that a little more frequently.
Yeah, I love that. I'm big with that because like we coach jumpers, right? So you only
Mhm.
have so many jumpers, hurdlers. You can only do hurdles so many times. You can only do jumps so many times before you start breaking down your body. But that was
Mhm.
something we used to do when I was in my early days of coaching. I was coaching a team that didn't have a track. And so we would be like visualization was our big thing.
Yes.
Now, we didn't have a track. However, we won our city meet like 3 or 4 years in a row. We had 3 state trophies. We broke a state record. We did a lot of stuff with like no track, but most of it was a lot of the
Mhm.
visualization stuff. Like we didn't really take days off, but we took days where they were really, really like light, and then we did the visualization stuff that went along with it. And man, I'll tell you, it's like that is the biggest secret weapon that
Yeah.
any athlete could have when it comes to that. So, what in terms of memories? Like I know that one, that had to be up there in terms of your favorite memories with competing. But what else? What other memories that you have that what you would say are in your top three when it comes to competition?
So I think probably I'll go through a couple of them. First one was at the start of this senior season. Our first 5 meets, I think it was, all got canceled for rain.
Mhm.
This was when I was trying to get recruited, but I didn't have the marks to show that I could throw as far as I'm saying I am. And then our very first meet was it was the Ben Davis relays, I believe, and that's when I threw 183.9 and jumped up to first in the state uh, at the current time. And so that definitely was a good memory. I had a really good sequence of throws that meet. That and then at regionals this year at Lafayette Jeff, throwing 62 feet. My second last throw was a really good feeling too. And that's both of the school records for Fishers High School, which felt really good to break those. So
Oh man, so we talked to two people with names engraved in Fisher's high school history,
Right.
huh?
Right. That's that's that is amazing. So you're able to overcome challenges. You trusted your training. You trusted your coaches, and so how do you balance being an athlete as well as a student? We talk about visualization. So even with that, is there anything from that that's kind of helped you balance being an athlete? Because being an athlete and a good student, it can be something that people may be intimidated by and may not want to pick a sport because of it. So how do you manage both?
Yeah, it's definitely a good thing. I would say to be an athlete because it actually helps being a student, in my opinion, just because of the disciplines that you gain when you're in athletics. I mean, you have to be disciplined enough to wake up for a morning workout, right? And just managing your time, whether that's practice or it's just getting school done in between those hours. And I think that discipline is just something that helps pay off for academics and just making sure you get all your grades in. So
So what would you say is your biggest like people do that different ways. Some people they stay up late at night, some people get up early in the morning. How are you like what was your method, I guess, in terms of maintaining that? Because I think a lot of younger athletes they miss out on that part, especially now if you have far more distractions than culture I probably ever had when we were coming through. We didn't have
Mhm.
the social media all day long and none of that stuff. So you guys have that and the games and you have everything that keep you distracted and keep you from sleeping and doing the things that you need to recover. How do you stay focused in terms of your method with getting everything accomplished?
Yeah, so the biggest thing I would probably say is when I know that I need to get schoolwork done, I gotta put my phone down because I think that's probably the number one distraction. But my time was usually I would get home from practice, and then I'd eat, and then I would study, and then after I studied, I would uh, go through my night routine, then go to bed. But it's just making sure you get that routine so you have time every day to get your studies done. I would say, and so mine was right after practice.
Yeah.
Okay.
So I like how you talked about, Joe, that being an athlete is actually better. It teaches you that discipline. What would you say would be a if any challenge about being an actual track and field athlete?
Mm-hmm. I would say it's a lot of hours, and especially with throwing. And I think this goes for any event as well. You're practicing the same thing every day. It's different than other sports where you may be practicing. Like in football, we have whole different like a whole playbook, and so you're not practicing the same thing every time. But with most track events, you're going through the same, and you're trying to perfect just one motion, one technique, one form. And so it can be a little exhausting mentally, just going through the motions of the same thing every day. But ultimately, yeah, just buying into that process, it pays off, but it can be a little tough at times.
So how do you push through when you reach those points where you're like, okay, here I go again. I'm doing the same throw, the same routine. Okay, I know how it feels to have a great throw. How do you push through that and persevere when you're kind of up against I'm tired, I don't, I need a break?
Mhm. I think it just goes back to that visualization and knowing the little things in practice that you don't like you do 1,000 times and you kind of get bored of. Those stack up, and the more and more muscle memory that you can get, more and more it's going to pay off in competition. So just kind of visualizing what that can do for my throw, and what that can look like in a meet if I continue to focus while I'm in practice doing those little things.
How do you think like being able to do that on a repetitive basis, and even though you didn't want to sometimes, how do you think that has helped shape your character in terms of what you would be like down the road?
Yeah, I think that definitely helps. The biggest thing I would think of is just kind of like perseverance, doing things you don't want to do, which obviously I think is going to help me later in life. And just kind of like the discipline of getting things done that you have to do, even though you don't want to.
Now, are those some of the values like your parents instilled in you? I know it's a lot of you all, so they had to set some rules. You said you had two older brothers. I know you have a younger brother. So
Mhm.
how were they during this whole journey with you in terms of you were two sport, at least two sports. Did you play anything else?
I did not in high school. No, it was just two sports.
Okay, well, you're a two-sport athlete, so somebody had to cart you around at minimum. So
Mhm.
how were they like in terms of what was that influence like? What were they in this journey? How supportive were they?
Yeah, definitely very supportive. I mean, always at my side, always there to pick me up on the downs and congratulate me on the highs. And so, I mean, yeah, even just simple little things like you said, carting me around, getting me to practices. Uh, and then always with five brothers, I have five brothers, there's always somebody to compete against. And you see them every time or every day just around the house. And so I think that was also good for me, just being pushed by my siblings.
So you had to compete at every point, not only at the meet, but then you would have to come home and compete against your siblings.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah,
It
you had
makes for fun evenings.
yeah, you had to compete at the dinner table.
yeah,
Right.
Five boys. There was only three of us in the house at the same time, so I can only imagine what it was like
Like,
with five.
right, like who's gonna eat the fastest or who gets that last piece of chicken or whatever.
yeah.
Wow. So
Oh,
with several, what are your thoughts on if we start talking about like hard work? I know we talked about hard work versus what are your thoughts on hard work versus like natural talent? Like what is that? What are your thoughts on that in terms of if you have natural talent, can it be better? If you don't have the natural talent, can you develop it and become, a champion at something?
Yeah. The first thing that comes to mind is like the classic quote that hard work beats talent when talent fails to work hard. And so obviously it helps to have that natural talent, but if you waste it, the person who works hard is always going to be the one that comes out on top. And I think that shows in a lot of things. Um, yeah.
Now, one other thing, I know you're a hard worker. So how does that how does that impact your confidence when it comes to competition and things like that? When you've been somebody who's been working hard.
Yeah. I think I remember at the state finals, it was a pretty crappy day, just kind of rainy, uh, miserable. Nobody really wanted to be there. But in the back of my mind, I'm just thinking these are all the practices adding up, all the days that I went out to the throwing ring and got in hours by myself, kind of just getting into the equipment shed and getting my own practice in and bettering myself in those extra Saturdays, right? And so when you're at those competitions, it's just thinking to yourself, I mean, this is what all this work was for. I belong here, and so now it's time to show it.
Okay.
awesome. What, Joe, what are some of your short-term goals and then also share what's your long-term goals? What do you want to, where do you want to be or where do you see yourself?
Yeah, so heading off to Tennessee, I'm pretty excited stepping into a program with a coach who it'll be his second year coaching the throws at Tennessee, Coach Eric Whitsitt, and just talking to him and seeing the vision of putting together an army. Next year, I think we'll have 12 guys total on the throw squad, and then
Wow.
he was telling me that we're going to get two more, so there'll be 14 the year after that. But just kind of putting together an army to ultimately be a force in the SEC as a team, and for the
Wow.
Tennessee Volunteers to just make a run at a national championship. And then, I mean, obviously, you want to succeed as your own guy. I would love to be an All-American. Love to medal at NCAA someday, but just ultimately buying into the process of a team and winning together. I'm really excited for.
Nice.
That is going to be an army. So I'm a believer in that. I can't wait to see it here.
Yeah.
All the great things that are going to come from that. Yes.
Yeah. Now you did mention your coach at Tennessee. I'm gonna let you shout out your high school coach because I'm okay
Yes.
with that. With giving people their flowers now while
Yes.
they can smell them. So you can go ahead and tell us about your high school coach. I mean, you told us about what he told you and to kind of get you mentally, in the game. But who was your high school coach? How long have you guys been working together and what made that relationship special enough for you to want to work to accomplish what you accomplish, uh, essentially for him?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so Coach Ben Weiss at Fishers High School. I remember the first time I met him was through football. I think I was in 7th grade. Actually, it was one of the junior high football camps for the high school, and I remember him because he knew my older brothers were already in the high school program, and so I remember him saying, "Oh, Gates, you ever thrown before?" It's like, "Oh, I don't know, Coach." And so then as I came into high school, he was my freshman football coach, and so just kind of building that connection. I think we only had probably 20 guys on our football team freshman year. That freshman squad and those coaches got really close. And so just building that relationship with him and then getting to see him in the spring and the fall every year. Uh, yeah, just get that closeness of that relationship and how much he truly knows that like you're going to get out of it what you put in, and he's always there to support me and coach me up. Uh, but he's someone that I can definitely count on. Um, and yeah, just building that relationship with him, and yeah, he's somebody I want to work hard for.
Nice.
So what lessons have you learned from being a track athlete that you want, others to know? And, because a lot of athletes or athletes who aspire to be a thrower, a runner, a jumper, a hurdler, they don't see the blood, sweat, and tears a lot of times. They just see the end product. So what lessons have you learned that you want to share? And then how has that shaped how you've continued to move forward and now uh, transition into competing collegiately?
Yeah, I would say do the little things right. I think that especially in track and field, the little technical things, whether it's throwing, jumping, hurdles, sprints, even distance, the form is so critical. And so doing the little things right that add up eventually, and getting all those hours in to perfect that form is, I think, what ultimately builds the end result that a lot of people see.
A quick question about, like, you've had some success with throwing. How do you handle like your disappointments and the setbacks? How do you handle those?
Yeah, admittedly, not as well as I should. I remember one of our first meets. It looked like a beautiful day, and we canceled it because there was rain coming, and I was not happy that day. We did like a mock meet practice, and I just was very frustrated. Did not throw very well in the mock meet because of my frustration. But I kind of learned to kind of just let things go that are out of your control. I mean, at the end of the day, there's nothing I can do about that if it gets canceled, and so just making the best of what I can. And so even if it's a bad meet, you gotta pick your head up and say, "Hey, I've got the next meet. I just gotta move on."
Hmm. Those setbacks a lot of times build your character even more. And we like to tell a lot of our athletes, you never know who's watching you. So how you react and you respond to adversity. It could be a coach recruiting out there. It could be your coach. You just never know who's watching. But those things help build character because if everything went right, you wouldn't know what it was like to fight and work hard and practice. So I think it's good that you recognize and you're being very transparent with us and saying that, at first wouldn't really handle it well, but it's something you're working on. And I thank you for sharing that because again, not everything is, oh dang it, I didn't throw well or I didn't. You get mad and it's I think in a testament to your hard work and you wanting to see yourself perform at your best. So yeah.
Yeah, I to piggyback off of that comment, I like in my earlier coaching career, I had college coaches actually pass on athletes because of the way they had like the way they were
Mm-hmm.
acting off the track.
Mm-hmm.
They were like, "No, I don't think they would be a good fit for our program,"
Mm-hmm.
just
Mm-hmm.
based on that.
Yeah.
Mhm.
So yeah, that is a good one.
Yeah.
Uh, so what as an you've given us a lot of things here about working on the little things about working hard, getting over some of these small things when it comes to competition. What do you say is like a value or asset that any athlete would really need to have And how would that translate over into maybe later on in life?
Yeah, I think a good rule of thumb is to have somebody around you that knows more than you do. And I think that's a good thing going back to my coach, Coach Weiss. I mean, I would still say he knows so much more than I do about the sport of throwing. And just saying, hey, what do you think about that last rep? Because sometimes, I mean, it's good to know sometimes when you know what is wrong, but what's frustrating is when you don't know what's wrong. And so it's
Mhm.
somebody else around you that knows more than you to say, hey, maybe try this. And I think that's a valuable asset that every athlete needs.
Mhm. How do you define success? And like you're a name, and so you've left your mark. How would you say you define success in track and field? And think about when you respond to this, speaking to those athletes who understanding track is how you throw. You can get eighth place and throw a PR, or you can run your best race and not make it to the quarter. So how do you measure that success, and what would you tell another athlete who's just starting out, and this is what success looks like? Because track is very different from a lot of other sports. So
Mm-hmm. I think the biggest thing in track is not to compare yourself to other athletes because it's all about times and marks. And so, really, you're stacking yourself up against your previous performances. And so, any day you PR is a huge improvement, and I think any athlete should be proud of that. Um, and so, at the end of the day, you want to win, but you're ultimately competing against yourself, and you're trying to be the best that you can be. So that would be my advice.
awesome. Not comparing is so important. Like you want to aspire, but again, you never know what it took for that person to get there, and you have to meet yourself where you are and start somewhere versus saying, okay, I want to throw as far as Joel, and this your first day picking up anything to throw or learning how to spin in the ring. And so no, that's really important. It's hard not to compare yourself, especially now with technology. So um do you feel like that influences athletes now more than ever? Like, I want to be like this person. And then how have you kind of tuned that out to really focus on your goals and what you want to achieve?
Mm-hmm. I don't think it's a bad thing to have people to look up to. I remember this year, Miklos Alekna breaking the discus world record, and just looking at that guy and be like, that guy's 21 years old, and he's doing things like that. And I don't think it's a bad thing to look up to because you want to shoot for the stars so you can hit the moon,
Mhm.
but at the end of the day, it's just stacking up and being better than you were the day before. So.
Well, Joe, I have to throw this one in here. Now, physically, from time to time, you get a little banged up, a little beat up. Now, your go-to seems to be your chiropractor.
Yep. Yep.
Tell me a little bit about that experience. What your thoughts were initially, how that went, what you felt like coming out of there. I know it wasn't a very long process, but how was that process? How do you think you'll utilize chiropractic going down the road? Um, yeah.
Yeah. I think at the end of the day, I mean, you feel good, you play good. And so I remember I came in to Dr. Ware week 2, and my back, or actually it might have been week 1 if this was football season, and my back was kind of banged up and just kind of helping me to feel the best I could. And then the week after that, I had I think a 50, 60-yard game with a 26-yard touchdown. And so it's just feeling the best you can be, and that the chiropractor helps with that, just getting you back to your best shape to perform at your best.
Did you have any, like with going to Dr. Ware, did you have any preconceived notions about what a chiropractor actually, how they would be able to help you? Or how did he debunk some myths that maybe people think about chiropractors?
Yeah, so I always thought that, I mean, you just go to the chiropractor and get your adjustment and then you're out. I didn't know that it could be so specialized to say, hey, this is aching or this is a pain. Can you help me with this? And so that's something that I learned going through the process, that it can really be specific to help you in a specific area. It's not just they crack your back a couple times and you're out.
Well, I'm glad we were able to tear down those walls. All those preconceived notions that people had. We're working this thing out. A good deal. Well, Joel, if people want to keep up with you and follow you, what social media platform should they look at, and just you can give us your handle. We'll put it in the show notes so they can find you. What would that be?
Yeah, the best way to keep up with me would probably be on Instagram, is where I'll post the most for track. My handle is Joel Gates _85. And then I'll occasionally post on Twitter some throws as well. And that is Gates _85. So,
Well, Joel, we appreciate having you.
Yes.
Coach Anna, any final questions?
Just any last final thoughts that you would like to share with that athlete that is just starting out? What's some little nuggets you want to drop for them?
I would say keep going. Consistency is the biggest thing in track. And I mean, you think about the guys that are the best at what they do. You ask them what I remember Ryan Krauser in an interview. I'm going to throwing because that's what I know. But somebody asked him. They said, "What's the best exercise that you found for throwing?" And he said, "Throwing for 23 years." And so it's just the consistency of every day working on your craft. And so I would just say keep going. You'll see the progress come through eventually.
Awesome.
Nice.
Cool.
Cool. We appreciate having you. Appreciate you joining us.
Yeah, thank you for having me.
Yes,
Yeah.
thank you, Joel.